Episode 14, Culinary Mastery. "Oh?" the mayor said curiously. "Keith, I didn't know you had such a wide range of talents. It seems we're in luck today." Even Quinn looked over with a trace of curiosity in her eyes. Keith frowned slightly. He didn't know how to cook. Sandra was clearly trying to embarrass him in front of his superiors, but the mayor had already spoken, and he seemed genuinely excited that Keith was going to cook for them all. It didn't really leave Keith with many choices. If this had happened to old Keith, he might have just run away at this point, but now he stood up and said with a smile, "It'd be my pleasure to cook for you all. I'll be right back." Keith's parents looked at each other. Keith barely ever set foot in the kitchen, other than to grab the occasional midnight bowl of cereal. How could he possibly cook a whole meal? Keith's mother wanted to go and help him, but the mayor laughed and said, "Let the young people do it, Mrs. Sanderberg. I'm sure you deserve a night off." "Quinn," James winked, "why don't you go help Keith? You still owe him a favor." Quinn was happy to help. Since Keith was on her team, she'd received a share of the credit when he caught the bank robbers, and once she'd connected the criminals to the string of robberies from a few years back, her captain had started talking about her next promotion. Although she'd already thanked Keith in person, she still felt like she owed him. Furthermore, she wanted to see if the hammer fist expert really could cook as well. She stood up and nodded before making her way out of the room. A cold smile spread across Sandra's face as she watched them both disappear into the kitchen. Her evil plan was working. In the kitchen, Keith stared at the pile of food in front of him, and the corners of his mouth curled up. He picked up a kitchen knife and got to work chopping vegetables. Ding! Culinary Mastery skill activated. Keith's movements became almost invisible to the naked eye as he diced the shallots. As Quinn watched from beside him, her face revealed a look of disbelief. Keith's knife technique was superb. He was so fast that his hand was a blur, and on top of that, every slice was cut evenly, as if processed by a machine. Quinn could barely believe her eyes. The rhythmic sound of the knife hitting the chopping board was intoxicating, and every step looked like a work of art. Quinn watched in a daze, unable to tear her eyes away. She didn't even dare make a sound, as if her words would break the wonderful scene before her. Just minutes later, there was a sizzle of stir-frying, and the fragrance of the dish floated through the kitchen, making her mouth water. The aroma drifted into the living room, and though everyone continued chatting casually, their thoughts drifted away as they caught a whiff of the delicious food. Each and every one of them swallowed discreetly as they began to salivate. 20 minutes later, looking at the table full of steaming dishes, the mayor laughed. "Oh, Keith, you really are something. You caught a group of seasoned criminals, and you whipped us up a feast. I can't wait to see if this tastes as good as it smells." The mayor scooped up a forkful of food. The moment it was in his mouth, his eyes went wide and he let out a groan. He saw the table full of people staring at him in anticipation, and he swallowed and looked up to Keith, saying, "I've never tasted such delicious chicken in my life." The others all gasped. It must be the most delicious food in the world. James saw this and couldn't bear it any longer. He laughed and said, "Wow, is it really that delicious? I'll try it too." He picked up a piece of chicken and put it in his mouth. His expression was even more exaggerated than the mayor's, but the difference was that he didn't say anything. He just kept shoveling food into his mouth as if he was going to swallow his own tongue. When the others saw this, they didn't wait any longer. One by one, they took the food and began to stuff it into their mouths. Then there was a burst of exclamations. As Quinn chewed, her eyes narrowed to slits. She'd eaten quite a number of delicacies in her life, but compared to the home-cooked dishes in front of her, there was a world of difference. She was growing more and more impressed with Keith. Keith's parents heaved a sigh of relief at the same time and looked at their son with a smile. Their child had finally grown up, and it looked as though he had a promising future ahead of him. Dang! You fulfilled everyone's wish to eat delicious food. Wish value +1. Current progress 4 of 10. Meanwhile, Sandra's face was filled with disbelief. How is this possible? I didn't think Keith ever stepped foot in the kitchen. She tried a mouthful of food, and her expression turned from shock to enjoyment before finally settling into an ugly expression. When Keith saw this, he said, "Oh, what's wrong, Sandra? Is it no good? I know you wanted to make a fool of me, so I'm sorry to disappoint you." He said all this in front of everyone else. If this woman dared to embarrass him in front of so many senior figures, then Keith would fight back. Once he'd shed all pretense of cordiality, there's no need to be polite. He would stand up for himself and his family, no matter what. The others looked over in surprise at his words, but after thinking it through, they seemed to understand. As they devoured the delicious meal, they observed Sandra in silent judgment. The mayor seemed to have guessed what had happened. He laughed and said, "Keith, is this your aunt? What's going on? Tell me." Keith smiled. "It's no big deal. It's just that Sandra owes my family tens of thousands of dollars. She came to borrow money again this evening, and it caused some conflict." The mayor frowned and looked at Sandra. "Why are you behaving like this? You're all family. If Keith can't lend you any more money, why would you make things difficult? The people of Summerfield are very particular about paying their debts. Keith's family don't have it any easier than you, and you don't seem to have a good reason not to return the money. So why haven't you paid back yet?" Sandra felt like she'd swallowed a fly. She didn't dare to refute the mayor's claims. She merely lowered her head and nodded. At that point, Quinn smiled and said, "Mayor Anderson, mobile payments are so easy nowadays. Money can be returned with just a swipe." Although Quinn seemed like an iceberg at work, she was very protective of her subordinates. How could she let one of her team suffer? Her words made it clear that Sandra should return the money on the spot. Sandra was stunned. Her sons, Travis and Jaden, were equally dumbfounded. It'd only been 2 months since they last saw each other, but in that time, their cousin had managed to establish a terrifying network of connections. Some of the biggest names in the city were speaking up for Keith. Everyone at the table turned to look at Sandra. There was a faint smirk on James's lips. At that point, Sandra knew that she had to return the money. If she said no now, her husband would be out of business by tomorrow.